Hi, companions. On 11th April 1970, a rocket sent off for the Apollo 13 mission from Kennedy Space Center in America. 3 space explorers were on it, going to the moon. Yet, fascinatingly, not so much as a year had passed since the day. At the point when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. Interestingly, this was at that point the 3rd NASA mission to send people to the moon. Seeing the progress of the last 2 missions, the space travelers in this rocket were extremely sure about their main goal. Furthermore, their fantasy was to go to the moon. Yet, around then, they were uninformed that their fantasy could never work out. In April 1970, at the point when their shuttle was around 330,000 kilometers away from the Earth, they heard a boisterous bang out of nowhere. An enormous bang that shook the whole shuttle. Inside a couple of moments, the advance notice lights and cautions begin going on uproariously. It was found that one of the oxygen tanks had exploded. Also, the other oxygen tank was spilling quickly. Okay, Houston, we've had an issue here. This is Houston, say once more, please. Houston, we have an issue. The mission control on the ground could barely handle it. They accepted that the instruments were breaking down. However, the space explorers in the rocket could see through the window that the air was spilling. Then again, they see that in view of the impact, the space apparatus had moved from its way such a lot of that it was going kilometers from the Earth consistently. Inside a couple of hours, the space travelers in Apollo 13 were so distant from the Earth that it turned into another record. Until this point, no human has gone such a long ways from the Earth as these 3 space travelers did during the Apollo 13 mission. Disregard arriving on the moon. The inquiry in those days was whether they could get back to Earth alive. This is the troubling story of Apollo 13. Carbon dioxide levels in the module are rising. The group were starting to endure. It was a critical state. It was an extremely crisis circumstance. In 1961, American President John F. Kennedy guaranteed the world that, prior to the furthest limit of the 10 years, he would have people on the moon, achieving the objective, before this decade is out, of handling a man on the moon. Furthermore, returning him securely to the Earth. This commitment ought to be found with regards to the virus war. Around then, America and the Soviet Association were taking part in a race. A space race. Who will be the forerunner in the area of innovation? In 1969, both Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 missions were effective. Space explorers didn't just step on the moon, yet in addition securely got back to Earth. Kennedy's commitment was satisfied. In any case, it made a side difference. Just after it, individuals and governments' advantage in burning through cash on space diminished definitely. Clearly individuals were invigorated to see a man step on the moon. Interestingly, in any case, individuals can't be so energized for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th time. The interest in the moon is blurring quick. Individuals trusted that Apollo 13 would simply be another normal flight. Consequently, the American government cut NASA's financial plan. What's more, numerous future missions that were made arrangements for the new couple of years, like Apollo 20, were dropped. That is the reason the Apollo 13 mission came at a vital time throughout the entire existence of room travel. NASA needed to demonstrate to the American government that it was as yet worth burning through cash on space. That is the reason the essential mission objective of Apollo 13 was not exclusively to review and overview the moon's dirt. However, to likewise foster the human ability to work in the moon's current circumstance. The fundamental mission objective of Apollo 13 is logical investigation of the moon. We desire to figure out a ton about the beginning of the moon. Furthermore, from that the beginning of our own planet Earth. The plan of Apollo 13 space apparatus was like that of the past space missions. For the most part, there were 4 fundamental parts: order module, administration module, lunar module, and send-off getaway from framework. The shuttle was sent off on a Saturn V rocket. Every one of the 3 space explorers were situated in the order module, which was the fundamental piece of the space apparatus. In any case, it was a little part. The order module is only this cone shape, which is just 11 feet in length. What's more, has a breadth of 13 feet. All the instrument boards, root gear, radios, life emotionally supportive network. Furthermore, little motors were all in this order module. The second most significant part was the help module, which had the vast majority of the oxygen for the space travelers. It had a few additional motors as well. Furthermore, energy components to produce power. The order and administration module is frequently, on the whole, called the order and administration module, or on the other hand CSM in short structure. They are associated during the whole mission, until the space explorers return to Earth. What's more, just during the re-emergence to Earth, are they isolated from one another. The third part was the lunar module, which was really expected to arrive on the Moon. Furthermore, when the work on Moon was finished, once more it should get joined to the CSM module. The fourth part, the send-off departure framework, was not so significant for the mission. Its just undertaking was to safeguard the space explorers from a mishap during the send-off. It works like this. Assuming that there's a mishap during the rocket send-off. What's more, the rocket bursts into flames. It securely launches the space explorers. What's more, removes them from the mishap. You can find in this video where this cut-short framework was being tried. However, assuming that everything works out positively in the send-off, then, at that point, the LES isn't required. Furthermore, it is catapulted and discarded. On 11 April 1970, since Apollo 13 sent off securely and effectively, the LES was not required. 3 space travelers were on the shuttle. Officer Jim Lovell, the pilot of the lunar module, Fred Hayes. What's more, the third, pilot of the order module, Jack Swigert. Unintentionally, as indicated by the first arrangement, none of these 3 were picked for this mission. Initially, 3 distinct space travelers were picked for this mission. Yet, they all had various issues in view of which they couldn't partake in this mission. Consequently, the team of these 3 space travelers takes off from the Earth to see this rocket send off. There were around 200,000 observers on the ground. This was a modest number, contrasted with the Apollo 11 takeoff the earlier year. That had 7 million observers for the rocket send-off. NASA again understood how rapidly individuals lost their advantage in space investigation. Be that as it may, in the event that we discuss the mission, this shuttle took off flawlessly towards its objective. It should require 3 days for them to arrive at the Fumaro cavity of the Moon. This is a major opening on the Moon's surface. A cavity which is accepted to contain a great deal of data about the Moon as well as about the Earth. The most concerning issue during the initial 2 days of the flight was when space traveler Jack Swigert understood that he had neglected to document his personal expense form. He asked the mission control on the planet whether he could get an augmentation. He got a genial answer that he could get a 60-day expansion. That's what this discussion demonstrates. Everything was going right. During the initial 2 days, everything was good to go in the mission. At 46 hours, 43 minutes of the mission, the container communicator on the job around then said that the rocket was looking good. Furthermore, that they were warned staying there out. This is Apollo control at 46 hours, 43 minutes. Shuttle is looking good, taking everything into account, Jim. We're exhausted down here. Things were going flawlessly to the point that individuals were getting exhausted. Incidentally, you will feel extremely abnormal to hear this. Be that as it may, purposefully giving yourself an opportunity to get exhausted is a beneficial routine, as I would see it. That's what I trust to expand your efficiency and imagination. Then you need to leave at some point free during the day. A time when you are in a real sense sitting idle, simply getting exhausted. This is vital to loosen up the brain, particularly in this day and age. On the off chance that an individual gets exhausted for 5 seconds, he begins looking at his telephone. This is the enormous mystery concerning how I can deal with my time so effectively. Furthermore, reliably figure out how to give you such countless recordings. The third day of the mission, 13th April, the group is informed that they need to do a few tests on the lunar module. Furthermore, aside from this, They need to do a transmission for the TV, where they will utilize the cameras to show the insides of the order module and administration module to the world. Presently the crowd's advantage in this was low to such an extent that no telecom company showed this transmission around then. Commandant Lovell's better half went to the celebrity segment of the mission control to watch this transmission. Around 6.5 minutes after the finish of the transmission, the flight regulators on the ground asked Space Explorer Swigert to check the oxygen level. There was the same old thing in this. It was only a normal check of the oxygen tanks in the help module. And keeping in mind that this check was being finished, unexpectedly, an enormous blast happened. Many admonition lights and alerts went off. As I told you toward the start of the video, the space explorers in the rocket were generally in shock. Administrator Lovell reached mission control and said, "Houston, we have had an issue." It worked out that one tank of oxygen was totally unfilled. Also, the oxygen level in the other tank was going down quickly. Mission control on the ground originally believed that the instruments should show some unacceptable information. Yet, that was reality. Everybody expected to desperately make a move, if they had any desire to save the existences of these space travelers. The television stations that had called this mission exhausting, what's more, were not showing it on the news, made this the news features abruptly. Apollo 13 to the moon is in serious risk earlier today. What's more, it won't make a moon arrival. The oxygen tanks in the shuttle were circle-molded. In these, oxygen was put away in fluid structure. There was a radiator at the middle, which changed over the fluid oxygen into gas. On Apollo 13, there were 2 such tanks in the assistance module. The tank number 2 was initially introduced in Apollo 10. In any case, was taken out from that point for adjustment. Furthermore, a minor mishap occurred with it. It incidentally tumbled down during fix. Furthermore, was harmed. The cylinder inside it was harmed. In any case, nobody saw it during the examination. While testing it, individuals saw that the tank wouldn't be totally unfilled. To dispose of the leftover oxygen, radiators were utilized to totally bubble it. Afterward, it was tracked down that the thermometer inside it could show a greatest temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. In any case, when the radiator was utilized to warm the oxygen in the tank, the temperature would reach as high as 538 degrees Celsius. Nobody saw this outrageous warming, since it didn't enroll in the thermometer. Because of this outrageous warming, the protection of the electrical wires in the tank were harmed. Prior to the mission, NASA's supervisors and architects had supported the tank after a careful examination. In any case, they couldn't see the inner harm. What's more, along these lines, during the Apollo 13 mission, during the standard check of the tank on the 3rd day, because of those electric wires, there was a flash and the tank detonates. It was simply by chance that the tank was connected to the outside of the shuttle. Had it been connected inside the rocket and detonated there, then every one of the space travelers would have been led immediately. But since it was outwardly, the blast happened outside. Furthermore, just a 13-foot board was harmed in the help module. What else was harmed in the space apparatus? The space explorers were not entirely certain. Presently everybody needed to pursue a significant choice. What direction might they at some point take to get back to Earth? The quickest method for getting back to Earth was to pivot the rocket. Be that as it may, to do this, the primary motor of the help module must be begun. The primary motor was situated close to the impact in the CSM module. Nobody knew regardless of whether the motor was harmed. The second method for getting back to Earth was to go towards the moon. What's more, circle around the moon to get back to the Earth. For this, the driving force of the help module wouldn't be needed. Yet, that's what the gamble was. It would require 4 to 5 days to get back to Earth. Did the space travelers have sufficient oxygen and water left? NASA's flight chief picked the subsequent choice: to take the long way back. The space explorers were told to quickly close down the CSM module, and keeping in mind that returning, they were told to involve the lunar module as a raft. However, this choice was a protected choice. It had a few issues. The lunar module was planned so that Just 2 space explorers could sit in it for around 20 hours. Since, as I told you, its unique object was to arrive on the moon. Also, get joined to the CSM module once more. However, presently, it was normal that these 3 individuals would sit in the lunar module for 4 to 5 days. The motors of the lunar module were not planned in a manner that they could be terminated over and over. Generally, this was likewise an unsafe move. To monitor supplies and energy, the space travelers were told to close down all unnecessary frameworks in the space apparatus, counting the radiators that were introduced. Saving electricity was vital. According to this arrangement, the space explorers sat in the lunar module. Also, interestingly, the motors of the lunar module were terminated. At the point when a motor is turned over, it is known as a consume. Thus, they do the principal consume to get on the new way. With the assistance of this consume, they arrived at the opposite side of the moon, the most distant side of the moon. They turned into the principal people on the planet to go such a long ways from the Earth. Furthermore, this record stays amazing even at this point. At their uttermost point, they were 400,000 kilometers away from the Earth. In the event that they remained on this way, they could arrive at the Earth around 153 hours after send-off. Be that as it may, this time edge was exceptionally hazardous. On the off chance that they arrived at Earth after so lengthy, then, at that point, just 1 hour of surplus food, water and oxygen would stay for the space travelers. NASA group on the ground accepted that this edge is exceptionally tight. That is the reason the space explorers were told to consume the lunar module motor for the subsequent time. The designers in the mission control had done numerous computations to see if the lunar module motor will actually want to deal with the subsequent consume or not. These computations demonstrated right. At the point when the subsequent consume is finished, the flight season of 153 hours was diminished to 143 hours. A 11-hour-long edge of endurance. Before the space explorers could unwind, another issue emerged. The high grouping of carbon dioxide. In spaceships, aside from oxygen tanks, there are canisters of lithium hydroxide to eliminate carbon dioxide. At the point when space travelers take in oxygen, they inhale out carbon dioxide. In the event that that carbon dioxide isn't eliminated, it will bring about a lot of carbon dioxide, which can be tricky. For that reason, canisters of lithium hydroxide are utilized. So carbon dioxide responds with it. Furthermore, becomes lithium carbonate. In any case, the issue here was that the canisters of lithium hydroxide in the lunar module were enough for simply 2 individuals to make do for 2 days. Yet, here, there were 3 individuals who needed to get by for 4 days. The beneficial thing here was that there were a few canisters in the order module as well. However, their channel was square. What's more, the ones in lunar module had a roundabout shape. The specialists on the ground had 24 hours to tackle this issue. Space explorers from the shuttle imparted to tell them pretty much everything present around them. Plastic sacks, cardboard, some suit hoses, some channel tape. They needed to make something that could be the answer for this issue. Following a couple of long periods of testing, they make a contraption to make this work. In the wake of giving bit-by-bit directions, another gadget was made with the things present there, with which the degree of carbon dioxide diminishes once more. Administrator Lovell in his book Lost Moon expresses that the contraption wasn't exceptionally attractive, yet it worked. What they made seemed to be this. In this whole salvage mission, even the littlest subtleties were dealt with. Space travelers were told not to drink in excess of 200 milliliters of water in a day, since, in such a case that they hydrate, they should urinate. Also, along these lines, the amount of their urine could redirect the spaceship. That is the reason they expected to make do by drinking so little water. These 3 space travelers lost 14 kilograms of weight altogether. Space traveler Hayes gets a urinary plot disease. Following 4 days, when Apollo 13's shuttle arrives at Earth, yet again space travelers understand that they need to consume. In their computations, they hadn't considered the cooling fume present in the shuttle. This made the shuttle stray from the track. authority level did one more consume of the lunar module, which welcomes the shuttle in the groove again. Fortunately, the rocket could endure the third consume as well, despite the fact that this lunar module was intended to endure just a single consume. The entire world was holding their breaths and watching the news channels. Furthermore, we're trusting that the space explorers will get back to Earth. Relatives and companions of the space travelers were watching this work out on television together. Presently, the greatest inquiry was, at the point when this wrecked space apparatus enters the world's climate, will the space apparatus be going to support the intensity influence? Can the space explorers make do? For this part, the space explorers needed to get back to the order module, since just the order module was made for re-emergence on the Earth. When the order module entered the world's environment, there was a correspondence power outage. This was ordinary on the grounds that, because of ionization of the air, the radio waves get obstructed. Also, correspondence isn't possible between the NASA workers present on the ground. Also, the space explorers in the rocket. Normally, this correspondence power outage is for 2 to 3 minutes. The fact that the correspondence power outage here makes it ordinary would be for a limit of 3 minutes. 3 minutes were finished. Be that as it may, there was no response from the opposite side. 10 seconds pass. 30 seconds. 60 seconds. Indeed, even following 4 minutes, there was no correspondence from the shuttle. Might the space explorers at any point get by or not? 4 minutes and after 27 seconds. At last, correspondence was gotten from the opposite side. The people watching it on TV could at long last inhale once more. Each of the 3 space explorers made do. The parachute was sent in the order module. Also, it gradually fell into the Pacific Sea. Collaboration was important. Great administration. Drive to consider fresh. At the point when things turn out badly, how would we fix them? Those are the 3 things that were totally important. The 3 space explorers get back free from even a hint of harm. Albeit this mission fizzled. None of the 3 space explorers set foot on the moon. Yet at the same time, this Apollo 13 mission transformed the pages of history, showing this verifiable salvage mission of the Apollo 13. Furthermore, the dauntlessness of the space travelers. A few books are composed on it. Also, films are made. After the examination of this episode, numerous security measures are taken on by NASA, so there could be no such mishaps in later missions. After Apollo 13, Apollo 14, Apollo 15, Apollo 16, and Apollo 17. This large number of missions were effective. On 7 December 1972, Apollo 17 was the last mission by NASA under the Apollo program. The space travelers in this mission burned through 3 days on the outer layer of the moon. Furthermore, this was the last time till today. At the point when people went to the moon. What is the purpose for this? Let in remark know if you know. Much obliged you definitely. I genuinely want to believe that you like our this work.